Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Hi there. Welcome to Game Over Winnipeg. I am your host, Brendan Labarre, hosting you this fine evening. It is 11:53 here in Winnipeg, and it's a late one. We were in Seattle, and the Winnipeg Jets have extended their win streak to 7 games with a 4-3 victory over the Seattle Kraken in overtime. Now, before we get into our show today, one thing I want to let you know is just be active in the comments. Be typing down there, making sure you are as much as a part of this show as I am. Making sure your make sure you're active in the chat and being, participating in the conversation. It's just you and I here, and all our community there in the chat. So just welcome. And on top of that, before we kind of get into our show here, let me tell you about the flagship show of the Game Over Network, Hyperdrive Hockey. It's all things hockey across various leagues in multiple countries. And wherever it is and wherever it is, Daphne, Max, and Kev have you covered for all your hockey news and steady dose of fun and fan engagement. You can find Hyperdrive Hockey on the Game Over Network YouTube channel or wherever you get your favorite podcasts on the Hockey Drive hockey page at thegameovernetwork.com. The last time I listened to the Hyperdrive Hockey, they were talking about Evgeny Malkin and Sidney Crosby both reaching milestones. It was fantastic. I had a great time. And I also just kind of opened up a conversation about like who the best people of the game were. Remember that top 100 list that the NHL did and they left Evgeny Malkin off of it? Kind of silly. Anyways, getting to the game tonight, that was quite a doozy. And it really started in that first period with the Winnipeg Jets. Like, they were kind of on the back foot. The Seattle Kraken, they were kind of jumping all over, especially in those first 10 minutes, jumping all over the Jets. And I think one of the big stories in this game is how the Winnipeg Jets just couldn't handle the speed of the Seattle Kraken. And as they were kind of going, whenever there'd be a loose puck, the Seattle Kraken would just kind of jump on it. They would just start attacking. They would counterattack right off the hop. And the Jets didn't really have an answer. That list was a fraud because Brock Besser wasn't there. The top 100 list. I don't know if Brock Besser qualifies. Has he even played enough games? Doesn't he get injured every 12 minutes? Anyways, with the Winnipeg Jets, they had their nice little counterattack. Oh, no, they didn't. They were bad on the counter. It was the Seattle Kraken who were counterattacking. And you really saw that in terms of just the speed of the game. The Winnipeg Jets were off the back foot. And where that was most evident was kind of in the neutral zone, really at the blue lines, and the game was really won and lost in plays at the blue line. And as we kind of get into the goals that were kind of played, that becomes a really common theme with this one, because when there was transitions going on and there were just broken up plays, that's when the goals were scored. So with that, we're going in and we have the Winnipeg Jets, and they're kind of on the back foot. They can't get in the middle. In the first period, they really didn't have any high quality shots, which was becoming quite the issue for them. And then as we go in, we have that first goal off of broken play when we're at the blue line, which is our theme of the game here. And the puck kind of gets swatted out. The Winnipeg Jets lose a battle, and it gets swatted out to Matthew Beniers, who has a wide open shot right in front of the net. He's about high. He gets his stick, and he's just, snipes it from the high slot. And that was he's an NHL player with an NHL shot. Even the best goalie on planet Earth is going to have trouble with those uncontested shots. And that was kind of the story of the first period. And as we kind of went into the period, I'm going to pull up a tweet here from a friend of the show, Nick Lynham, who, fun fact, we used to drive to university together. And Nick said after the first period, the difference in speed and transition of that first period gave me April 24 vibes. And that was really kind of the story there. It reminded me as well of the Colorado series, because the Seattle Kraken were just all over them. That transition, the Jets really didn't have an answer for it besides number 37 in the back of the net. Vassity says, I'm so depressed, from a Kraken fan. And honestly, I kind of believe the Kraken deserved that one. I think they were the better team throughout the game. So those were Nick Lynham's thoughts. And if you want to be in a Game Over episode with me, Make sure you're tweeting me at ojetso. Make sure you're following me. I follow you back. I'll kind of get your kind of tweets here, and we can talk about them. Even if you're not in the comment section, you can be a part of Game Over Winnipeg. So kind of going into the second, the Winnipeg Jets seem to make a few adjustments, and right off the hop, kind of 3 minutes in, the Winnipeg Jets seemed like they were really buying into that stretch game as well. The Seattle Kraken were kind of throwing the puck behind the D, and they were kind of beating the defensemen wide as a result. They were really putting them on their back foot. So as the Winnipeg Jets were kind of adjusting to that, they did get some nice plays out of kind of going back on the rush, kind of giving them a little rebound, not rebound, but kind of a counter punch in that way. And there was a play with Nikolai Ehlers and Cole Perfetti, that second line, where they were able to break into the zone and they were able to hit a streaming Pionk, and he didn't quite score. And that felt like it was going to be a really big play in the game, where it was like, oh, we finally got something going. We finally got the plays kind of going our way. But then that big save happens. And that's kind of where we see the Winnipeg Jets as they've been on the 7-game streak. We have all these moments, especially in the Pittsburgh and Blues game of late, where the Winnipeg Jets have been dealt with this adversity, as much as adversity as you can have in a 7-game winning streak to open the season. And that kind of felt like it was going to be a big shift in the game. But the next play happens off the rush again. Josh Morrissey kind of banks it up to Mason Appleton, and he is able to break in the zone, or it was either Mason Appleton or Adam Lowry who kind of broke in zone, passed it back to Appleton. He took a shot, and it kind of went off Nino Niederreiter's chest into the net. It looked like he might have kicked it. It looked like there might have been a little bit of push at the end, but he was able to kind of restrain himself from, I'm sure he wanted to kick it in as much as he could, but he was able to kind of just let it roll off him, go in the net, and the Jets were up 2-1. But before that as well, there was the, or I believe it was after actually, the 3-on-2 with Oliver Bjorkstrand kind of scoring, and that was also a play at the blue line where they were able to enter and kind of make in before Oliver Bjorkstrand scored a goal, which is ultimately called off. And you kind of think in there where it's like, oh, that might be still the story of the game. The Winnipeg Jets might still be on our back foot. But as we were kind of going through the game and things were ramping up, and the Winnipeg Jets were up 2-1, things turned around when Liz Howd of Game Over Winnipeg fame said, "Success in hockey generally means creating more than you give up. That generally includes goals, high danger scoring chances, shot attempts, possession time, etc." And she didn't think that the top line was creating more than they gave up in any of those categories. And that was immediately preceded by Gabriel Velarde scoring that goal, to which Liz said, "You're welcome." And on that goal, it was with our theme of the game today at the blue line. The Seattle Kraken, they were kind of dilly-dallying in their own blue line, where Kyle Connor had some back pressure. He was able to intercept kind of the puck there. He had a takeaway, got to Mark Scheifele, got it to Gabriel Velarde, and Gabriel Velarde had one of his classic power moves to the net. It was really nice to see that from him because he's someone who's kind of struggled of late. He hasn't scored a goal yet in this young season. And coming in, he was like the bottom person in terms of scoring in that top 6. So it was nice to see him on the board. And then through that, we got kind of getting to the third, and you could kind of see Gabriel Velarde get a little bit of mojo back, which was kind of nice. He had some nice back pressure with 2 minutes left in the second, which kind of makes you think, okay, maybe he's coming back, which is fantastic. And then going to the third, off that power play from the penalty. I forget who took the penalty, but there was so many nice plays, and you finally saw Cole Perfetti. Cole Perfetti's really had a really nice emergence in the last 4 games or so, where he kind of really powered along that left side. He had the zone entry, made a beautiful pass cross ice to Nino Niederreiter. Nino Niederreiter did his little 1-2 pump fake, and he was able to just shoot it right past. He had a wide open cage, which was so nice to see. Nino Niederreiter is just someone who, ever since he put on the Winnipeg Jet jersey, he's been such a great contributor. And then from there was just with the Seattle Kraken goals, just more kind of breakdowns at the blue line. This first one was another play where the puck is kind of bouncing around, and then Eberle kind of gets lost behind the defense, which is kind of what was happening the whole game. We got the puck kind of going down there, and then Eberle was able to just backhand it past Connor Hellebuck. And you could really feel it kind of tensing up after that. With about 10 minutes left, the Seattle Kraken really turned on the Jets, no pun intended, and they were just able to drive the Jets back into their own zone, and they were able to kind of just push them back. And then the Jets were trying to bend but not break, but eventually Brandon Montour off a play was able to just take a shot, hit Bernier's stick, and he tipped it into the net. And going into overtime, the Winnipeg Jets, it kind of felt like, oh, is this it? Is this how this streak is going to end? But in the NHL, things tend to equal out because the referees will not allow it to be any other way. And and there was a lot kind of going on in this game. It's kind of a chippier game. And then because the Winnipeg Jets had 2 penalties and the Seattle Kraken had 1, well, we have to even that up. And it was a trip. That did happen, but you'd be surprised to see how many times there are a weirdly equal amount of penalties taken versus penalties, I guess, power plays for or power plays against in a game, and how often that links up. So with the Neil Pionk getting tripped, you saw Nikolai Ehlers come off the bench and score the OT winner. It was a beautiful goal. It was almost like the hockey gods wanted it to go in, the way it kind of dribbled in, especially after that one Connor Hellebuck where it kind of dribbled it through the same way, and Neil Pionk kind of swatted off the line. It was almost like the hockey gods coming back and kind of making that correction where they just wanted it to go the other way. And that was and that's how the Winnipeg Jets kind of won this game. It was a great time to be a fan. It was super exciting to come in and watch them go for the 7th one and ultimately get it. And it's just really nice to see this team really coming together after not seeing a lot of changes. And kind of when you think about the lack of changes, you're kind of thinking, is there a lower ceiling for this team because everyone on this team is aging, especially with Connor Hellebuck, Mark Scheifele, some of your most important players being on the wrong side of 30. And when you come into the season and you have that hot start, it's nice to see that your kind of fears and your worries are kind of invalid, and you're just like seeing this kind of season unfold, and it gives you such a buffer to have if you're going to struggle down the stretch, you can kind of afford that because of the way they've started. And that is our first period. And before we get in the second period, let's talk about the Game Over Network, because the Game Over Network is an independent production focused on community inclusion and quality people. If you're interested in supporting the Game Over Network, we actually have crowdfunding sources available. In the description of this episode, you'll find a link to our Patreon page, and we're also working on a page through LaRouque, a crowdfunding platform for companies originating in Quebec. For LaRouque, we're aiming to raise $15,000, and if we hit that goal, we'll gain access to government grants that will allow us to employ more people, like maybe yourself, if you would like to join the Game Over Network team. If you have any ideas for what you'd like to see as giveaways from these crowdfunding efforts, let us know in the comments on Twitter, Instagram, or our Discord server. And with that, I will just remind you that before we go in the second period, make sure you're just commenting down below. You are as much of this part of the show as I am, and if you'd like to be a part of it, if you'd like to chat, like to kind of go back and forth a little bit, just making sure you're having a nice little time commenting throughout the video. All right. So as we go, let's get into the second period. And in the second period here, we're going to be talking more about just overall themes that are present throughout the Winnipeg Jets season, this game. And I want to start first by talking about Gabriel Vilardi. And Gabriel Vilardi started this game. Coming in the game, he had 3 assists, and that were all the points he had. He hadn't scored a goal. And Gabriel Vilardi, I think a lot of hockey players are like this. They're kind of fueled by goals. No matter where you are, especially as a top 6 forward, you may not feel like you're playing well unless you're putting the puck in the net, especially from the start. You're sitting on that goose egg. And you could really see in his play. There were some passes that a player of Vilardi's caliber would be making, but it would just kind of roll off his stick, go the wrong way, and kind of it just seemed like when it rained, it pours. And there was a play 30 seconds in the game where just off a face-off, it kind of rolled to him, and he tried to make a pass, and it just flubbed, and it almost caused a breakaway. He was just trying to give it back to his defenseman off a face-off in the offensive zone, and it almost caused an odd man rush. And you're just thinking like, man, when it rains, it pours for this guy. But our boy Gabriel Vilardi, he comes and he's kind of fighting through it, and he scored a goal in which a way that you kind of want Gabriel Velarde to score goals. He scored in his own way. In his own way, he did a very classic Gabriel Velarde move. He was 3 feet from the net as he reached around and scored on what you might call it. Who was in net today for the other team? Oh, it was Joey. It was Joey Decord, and it was Joey Decord. And just so it's not always about the way or how many goals you score. It's about the way you scored them. Because I'm sure that if he got, an empty netter, for example, that wouldn't feel the same as scoring a goal the way that kind of he's known for scoring goals. And I think that kind of makes a difference for him. And it's going to be exciting to see Gabriel Velarde as the core piece of that PLD trade kind of come through and kind of show the Gabriel Velarde that we were used to seeing throughout last season. And I think it kind of really helps because Kyle Connor's been playing so good lately. And with Gabriel Velarde kind of getting that mojo back, you just really want to see him continue that and take those next steps in the game, especially since he's a part of that top power play unit that's been so good. And it's kind of wild that he hasn't been as big of a part of why that's going so well in terms of how good the power play has been. So it's kind of just nice to see. And I think from a person who weirdly focuses on these things, I think maybe Gabriel Velarde needs to so with a lot of the Bauer 6 this year, you're able to customize the colors, and he weirdly has like this Seattle Kraken green color, and this is gonna be a no sensical thing, but like buddy, like blue or red, like pick a Jets color. Like even like Nino Niederreiter has the Swiss one. Again, weird, I notice these things, but my guy, he has a Swiss one, so it's red. Gabriel Velarde, just like be a team guy, have a team colored stick. It's, with the customization options, not that hard. And another thing with this team right now that I kind of wanted to get into, again, go comment in the chat if you'd like to be a part of the conversation, is the back pressure that has been present throughout the past few games. And when I talk about back pressure, it's that, a lot of teams, when they come back, you talk about back checking. And it's almost like it's not just about skating fast, going back and like picking up a guy. It's stick placement. It's making people make mistakes by being on them right away. And some people who come to mind from that, who've been doing extremely well for the Winnipeg Jets, who I think played well today, are Kyle Connor and Nino Niederreiter. And you see when the Jets are coming back in transition, a little less today because they're having some struggles, but there are some really nice moments still. The Winnipeg Jets are really good at coming through, putting their six in those lanes, knocking the puck back, and kind of making transition that way. And you saw in that Gabriel Velarde goal, that happened because Kyle Connor did that very thing. And that's something that was really coming through. It's really coming and making those changes in transition, because the Jets seem to be a slower team. They struggle in transition at times. They did in that Colorado series. They didn't today. That's where that parallel came from. From Nick Lynham. And then with that, you have just a nice way to recover, just a nice way to turn the puck over, and it was very nice to see that. And continuing on with that, some things that have been nice to see over the past few games is kind of the evolution of Cole Perfetti. And Cole Perfetti is a guy who came into this year. Oh, and we have Don Montreal. Kyle Connor has always been one of my favorite players on the Jets roster. And I think, and he's been so super good lately. There's been some times where Kyle Connor, and I think that rightly so, has been accused of being an empty calorie goal scorer, of being a guy much in the Phil Kessel mold, where he can sometimes not provide some of that extra juice you'd like. You don't see that forechecking ability, because he's a guy who's known for scoring goals, that you'd rather him hanging out in the slot. For a fast guy with great hands, sometimes his zone entries have not been there. There was a play today within the last few minutes where he just kind of cut through the Seattle Kraken defense like butter, and you really like seeing that from a guy with those tools who should be able to do those things. But Kyle Connor lately, with his back pressure, he's been forechecking a little bit better. Not too much, but again, you kind of want him hanging back, especially when you have Velarde and Scheifele on his line, who are so good down low. And then also, just like his playmaking ability is kind of taking a little bit more of a step. And I think Kyle Connor has that beautiful, amazing highlight from that Nashville series where he did the between the legs pass, and that's kind of his best playmaking play of all time. But in the past few games, you've really seen him make an effort to kind of curl to that right side of the rink and then use his right-handed line mates by giving them the puck, because it doesn't matter which one of them is there, to kind of make that classic Scheifele scoop shot, which has been really nice to see. It's been really awesome to have Kyle Connor kind of take those steps, even when he's, how old is he? He's a late 96, so he's about 28 years old, and he is just having that progression, just showing that that buy-in from that player has been super nice to see. And then we also have like Cole Perfetti, who's another guy who's just seems to be taking a step a little bit on the younger side. Cole Perfetti is, I believe he is 22. And he's a guy who, in his first couple seasons here in Winnipeg, he's had a lot of trouble staying healthy. And one thing that I think has been a struggle for him is he's had 3 years in professional hockey, but he's also played in the AHL at 19, which is pretty unconventional. He doesn't have that speed you'd like, and getting the injuries and maybe not being able to skate definitely doesn't help with that. His skating's not his best attribute. But the one thing about Cole Perfetti that was always there, that you always saw, was his vision. And with that play today, you really saw it kind of come out. And you really like to see that when your players have a certain skill, when they have something that they're completely dominant at, you really like to see them kind of excel in that way. In the same way Gabriel Velarde around the net, and that's the way he scored his goal. You really like to see Cole Perfetti being rewarded for having that vision, especially on the knee rider. And then another guy with Cole Perfetti as well, just the past few games, he comes out of this contract dispute. Personally, I wanted him on a longer term contract. It was something maybe a little bit conflicting messages about from the GM and reporters about whether something like that was available. But you really are hoping that he becomes the player that demands a lot of money, because with the Winnipeg Jets, they do have a lot of guys. They have a lot of guys in that maybe they are first liners, but you don't have someone who can like really take over a team. And you look at those little spurts from Cole Perfetti, and you're hoping that that talent can kind of be one of those elite talents that can take over a game, because people forget that in his draft year, he was a really highly touted prospect, and he really fell to the Winnipeg Jets, and Cheveldayoff was pretty ecstatic when he did, and it's for good reason. He's a super talented guy. Don Montreal said, tall, good hands, smooth skater, but I don't see many Jets matches. Go Habs. Yeah, you know what? We'll say go Habs. I don't see many Jets matches. Yeah, like games. Yeah, for sure. And then I think one thing that you might see with Cole Perfetti, with the kind of elevation of his game, is I think him and Ehlers are kind of flipping wings quite a bit. Ehlers started a lot of the season on the right wing, and they really flipped him to the left side in a lot of these games. And that allows him to kind of do that curl around the net with a little bit more consistency, because he's on his forehand. And I think that Cole Perfetti might be a little bit more comfortable there too. And that's just a gut thing. Because if you remember a few years ago when he was playing pretty well, he was playing the right wing with Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois. And he was able to kind of use Luc Dubois' kind of size and driving the net. And then Kyle Connor, he was able to kind of set him up with his playmaking ability. And having that kind of him on the right wing just as another look is something that's been really nice to see, as just flexibility for the Jets. And if you ever had to kind of think about, if the top six was ever having a rough moment, Cole Perfetti playing the right wing also allows you to keep Kyle Connor left if you're going to flip him and Ehlers, which is something many Winnipeg Jets have loved to do for a long time. And then from there, I'd just like to say, for the story of this game, it was chippy. It was a lot of sticks were there. It was really nice to see that the Winnipeg Jets could handle that playoff style. They're a veteran team. They should be able to. But they didn't get frustrated. They didn't get flustered. And that's something where you really see a team that they're just feeling themselves. They also roll the punches. And with a guy like Mark Scheifele too, just it's kind of fun to watch him from his first season where he was, kind of known as to be a little bit of a whiner, to like him now just rolling with the punches. They know they'll get their chances. They're not worried about the sticks, like getting hit. They're not worried about The penalties that aren't called, they just go through and play their game, especially when they're feeling themselves so much. Dan Montreal, you're like my best friend right now, just coming in. How come Pionk has so many points in the start of this season? He's been super active in the offense. The Winnipeg Jets are employing, it's almost like a 4-forward system where they really like to, like, when they cross the blue line, it's very common to see a Winnipeg Jets player kind of drive in and really drive the net. Even you see Dylan DeMello do this a lot lately, weirdly. Josh Morrissey does it. He really likes to creep down that wing. And with Pionk, he's not always been the best defensive player, so maybe he's just more willing to be aggressive, but it's really working out for him lately. And just he's finding shots, he's getting down, and a lot of those rebounds are coming in. It's just really almost like an active choice from the defense and the coaching staff to get these players involved in the offense. And I remember when I covered the Minnesota game a few weeks ago, I praised Pionk for his ability to kind of drive in, be a part of the offense. And with the Jets being a part of the offense, they are really looking to the point to get shots through and to get some tips. And you really saw that last game with Nino Niederreiter when it almost seems like the Winnipeg Jets defense are either shooting it 4-6 or they're shooting it actually across the slot so that they can hopefully get those tips and get those redirects into the net. And then we got my co-host here. Are we co-hosts? Is that kind of how it goes when we host at different times? My co-host, I'm going to say co-host. My co-host, Ty. It's 2:30 a.m. here in Halifax, but let's go Jets. Great show, buddy. Thanks, buddy. Hopefully you get some sleep. I hope everything's going great for your curling in Halifax, Ty. And as we get to our third period, let me tell you about Game Over's merch. And what is better than rocking? What is a better way to support something you love than by rocking its clothing? We have a little QR thing. Personally, I said this on Ty's last show. I love the mugs. The mugs are beautiful. I'm definitely going to pick one of these up. And Game Over's apparel line has dropped with 3 unique designs. Whether you feel nostalgic pull of our retro skater design, want to make a statement with our established design that is currently on sale. If you want to wear your love of goalies proudly with our Live and Die by the Goalie design, which the Winnipeg Jets do quite often. Or if you just need another coffee to get you through the winter, we have you covered. Designed by Brady Chalice from Game Over Winnipeg. That's us. Use the QR code on stream now and take a look through our apparel store and help us rebuild local sports media in Canada while repping your community. And we have the mug. Where's my finger going? There. We have the QR code here to check out more stuff. There's bandanas for your dogs. My dog's name is James Bond. His name's JB, like the dog from Kingsman. He's getting one of those. We have these hoodies that's not it. We have one of these hoodies as well. I love this hoodie with the Heritage Classic colors. Definitely picking up one of these too. Don Montreal says co-host or co-coast. Co-coast because he's in Halifax. Exactly, right? Don Montreal is just my guy right now. So yeah, we have our merch here at Game Over Winnipeg. I'm getting some soon. I'm sure Ty's getting some soon. I can't speak for him, but it's there in the store. It's great. Look at it. Brady designed it. Game Over Winnipeg legend along with Liz Howd. And going into the third. Ooh, Don Montreal. He's asking about Patrick Line in Montreal is here. I'm going to say that for the overtime segment. That's when the overtime segment, our fourth period, is when we can ask any questions. And I think we're going to stick to the Jets right now, but I will definitely talk about Line in Montreal this year when we get there. So for the third period, I'd like to talk just quickly about Winnipeg's kind of their identity and their culture. And I think when you have a good team, a team that can go far, which hopefully the Winnipeg Jets can do this year, a few things you want to know is if your team has an identity and if your team has a good culture. And that's a culture in Winnipeg here has been a question for a long time. Going back to kind of the Blake Wheeler days as captain, kind of going back to the Dustin Byfuglien throwing Evander Kane's stuff in the shower. It's been kind of a question of when you have people in a city like this, do things kind of stir in the room? Do the frustrations kind of mount? And that's something we're kind of seeing. So with the identity on the ice for sure is the Winnipeg Jets are a shutdown team. They're not the fastest team. They're not a high and fly offense. But what they will do is they want to win the game -1-0 or 0-1 is how you would say that. They really just kind of hold their spot. They really want to they're like a tank in an MMO or an RPG. They were going to take the hits. They're going to take the hits. They're going to take the hits. And then they want to dish it back. And then Ty said, I'm getting some for Braden, no doubt. The mugs go hard. The mugs do go hard. I'm going to drink out of it so I don't have to drink out of this Yeti when I get it. And with the Winnipeg Jets, they kind of sit back, they hold back until they're ready, and then they kind of wait for their opportunities. They throw the pucks on net. They get the rebounds. And they kind of stick to their identity, and that's what makes them successful. And they don't get flustered, which is kind of an evolution of something that we've been seeing over the kind of 2 years since, or this is the third year since Bonus took over, since Arneal took over. And they've had a few successful seasons, especially last season and this season, where they're really committing to that identity. And I think that was really solidified when Kyle Connor was out last year. And they really committed to the let's shut things down. Let's not panic. The goals will come. We just got to play our game. And you saw that kind of tonight where they were kind of on the back foot, but they believe in themselves. And especially when Connor Hellebuyck's in net, they're so confident in their goaltender and they're so confident in their ability to hang in games that they're just never really flustered in those kind of environments, which is something you see from really veteran teams. And you really enjoy seeing it out of a team that, while they haven't really won much, especially with this group, like going back to the 2018 season where they got to the third round, or when they, when they swept Edmonton and then they got swept by Montreal, which is the last time they went past the first round. They're just a team that really knows what they are, especially compared to that team that got swept by Montreal. And just having that constant identity and knowing who you are really helps, especially in those later days of the season, especially going to the playoffs, and you know how you're going to be successful. And then with the culture of this team, I think that's something that's kind of touched on in how just the vibes around this team. Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele, when they signed for 7 years, changed a lot of things. It changed the projection of what this team was going to be. It felt like we were going down a rebuild hole. It felt like the Winnipeg Jets were going to be trading the best player to play in 2.0 history in Mark Scheifele. If you want, definitely Connor Hellebuyck. Connor Hellebuyck, who's won a Vezina Trophy, who won it that year. And then Mark Scheifele, who's probably the most iconic Winnipeg Jet 2.0. You could say Bufflin or Wheeler, but Scheifele was the first draft pick. He's been here. He's signed to play here until he's 38. It's kind of incredible to have a player of that caliber here for that long. And you see with kind of that, it really changed of how people want to be here. The Winnipeg Jets will never be able to acquire or like go out and attract people like that. But you see when players come here, a lot of times they like it. Like Nemestikov re-signed, Colin Miller re-signed it, and they didn't play him at all. And those are low stakes guys. But Nino Niederreiter, who scored 2 goals today, he comes here, and it might be a little different with him playing in Minnesota before liking it, him being from Switzerland and liking it. But he's a guy who can kind of get a contract like anywhere. He's such a useful player, and you saw it today, especially as a depth guy on that third line. And he's a guy who stayed here. And you have people sign here like long-term. Josh Morrissey's here for a long time. He had no problem committing. Kyle Connor signed here a long time out of ZLC. And a lot of those are RFA years. But once people get here, they're pretty bound to stay. You hear about like how Alex Iafallo really enjoys it. And it's really nice to see that even if teams on other team or players on other teams aren't too keen on coming to Winnipeg, that other players are coming in, and when they do get here, they want to stay. And a part of that is the competitiveness that they've kind of had throughout the last few years, and even losing the first round, there's a little bit of like thought that you can win here. And there are veteran guys, useful guys. Vladimir Nemestikov is such like a nice Swiss Army knife. He reminds me of Matthew Perreault with a little bit less forechecking ability. And it's just like, it's so nice when you can get those veteran guys, those guys where you'd want to have them as a depth lineup on your team, and just for them to come in and just want to stay. Then we have Don Montreal, my guy, says, how come people don't legitimize their Stanley Cup final? I found it stupid that some people say that Marc Bergevin was average. We went to the Stanley Cup. I think we're going to answer the have question. We might just have a little like Montreal thing here. Ken Klimchuk, I hope that said that right. Klimchuk. Please feel free to correct me. I'd like to say it right. Nino, tough and great hands. Yeah, just one of those guys, like a stereotypical power forward. Like there's a reason he was picked in the top 5 of his draft year. Maybe played a little earlier than he should have as an 18-year-old. Islanders were a little tougher, but like he really found his way, and he's one of those guys, like you talk about a guy who can be a complementary piece on any line, and on the third line he's like the second guy to Adam Lowry, or he might even be like a co-driver with him, the same way that Ty and I are co-hosts. But you really see like how valuable that player is, and he's like a type of guy you can play. He can play on your first line. It's such a cliche. You can play on your third line, but you don't care because he's so valuable wherever he is. And then Dan Montreal said Pro was smaller. Pro was smaller. Pro just had that engine. I believe he said one time that he never threw a hit until he made Pro. He's just what a Winnipeg Jet legend. Played a lot of seasons here. I believe he played 7, which great guy, especially when he's on the fourth line with Brian Little in those in that 1 year with or for a few years, but in 2018 particularly. All right, and I think that is going to bring us to overtime. So this is when Don Montreal is going to get his questions answered about my feelings of Montreal. And if anyone else has any questions relating to the Jets, relating to anything else, feel free to ask. And as we get into overtime, we can start answering some of these Montreal things. Big heart. Yeah, Perreault is just, what a beauty. What a guy. All right, Dan Montreal, I'm climbing back up the chat. We're going to start with Patrick Laine. What do you think about Patrick Laine in Montreal this year without the injury? What I was worried about with Patrick Laine in Montreal is Patrick Laine, unlike any player I've seen before, is like when his highs are so high and his lows are so low. And I think with him and Caulfield on the power play together, you really want Patrick Laine's shot in that one particular area. And I think that Cole Caulfield might have been competing for that spot. And you really hope that with Patrick Laine, I don't think he can play as effectively in those other spots. So I thought maybe Caulfield would move to the bumper and they'd be able to kind of do it that way. And then have Nick Suzuki on the other half wall, Lane Hudson or Mike Matheson at the point. But as long as they can make that coexistence work, I think Martin St. Louis has been really good, especially developing guys. And when I talk about guys with a particular skill like Cole Perfetti or Gabriel Velarde, Patrick Laine just has the kiss of death. And he doesn't need to have the best analytics or be in the offensive zone, because anytime he's in the offensive zone when he's on his game, he can just rifle a shot from anywhere. Yeah, and 5-on-5 too. Like, I don't think I would play. Yeah, Dan Montreal said and 5-on-5. I don't think Cole Caulfield and Patrick Laine are going to be playing on the same line anytime soon. And it then becomes a thing of, okay, are you gonna put Patrick Laine with a Christian Dvorak? Are you gonna put him with a Alex Newhook, Kirby Dach? Like, who's the second line center? And what are the matchups you're gonna get for him? Because he's not the best defensive player, but if you can kind of get him some easier matchups, like when Winnipeg, Adam Lowry would be taking up those hard matchups for the Jets. Scheifele did the secondary matchups, and then usually that's Stastny, line. Thinking back to 2018, would get the third-rate matchups. And where is Patrick Laine going to be able to succeed and get those opportunities on the Montreal Canadiens rebuilding team? But I think if they kind of molded and you don't want to do this for any player, but if they found a way to get those matchups for him and kind of make that coexist in the power play, I think him playing in the Eastern Conference on a team with defensemen like Mike Matheson and Lane Hudson, who can like move up the ice, get him the puck, I would hope. And with Patrick Laine, he's one of those guys. It's like you hope, because you don't know. He's like with player assistance, all his injuries. You hope he'd be doing well, and I hope he is doing well. I love the guy. I got so much merch. He's on my jersey right now. Like, he's one of those players you love to watch, because whenever he's out there, he has the chance to just rifle the puck whenever he has it on his stick and it just to go in the net. It's a magical thing having Patrick Laine on your team when he's on his game. And then Don Montreal said, how come people don't legitimize their Stanley Cup final? Meaning the Habs for audio listeners. I found it stupid that some people said Marc Bergevin was average. We went to the Stanley Cup. I think it's because people may feel that the Carey Price factor of it, much like Connor Hellebuyck, Connor Hellebuck's never done this, but it felt like Carey Price kind of projected them past a few of those matchups. But you know what? When you have a goalie, the goalie is a part of your team, and even if that was the reason, no one else had Carey Price. Like, that is just, you can win with goaltending. And I think like you look back at 2012 with the LA Kings, that team was absolutely incredible. They had so many things going for them, but there was just times where Jonathan Quick said that the other team was not scoring, and he'd use his athleticism, he'd use his just his pure talent to just steal some games. And you don't win a Stanley Cup without stealing some games. You look back at the 2018 Washington Capitals in their Eastern Conference final against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Braden Holtby had shutouts in game 6 and 7. People don't delegitimize the Washington Capitals Stanley Cup because their goalie got them there. And also I think with that COVID season, like with the Montreal Canadiens, there might be just some things there about it being a short span, but at the end of the day, they had to go through 3 teams to get to the final. They had to face off against the Lightning, and they kind of fell short. I believe they lost it might have been 5, I believe, maybe 6. But I think people look at that roster and say it was just a Hall of Fame goaltender that kind of got them there. All right. And I think that unless we have any last second questions here, this has been Game Over Winnipeg. My name is Brendan Labarre. My Twitter account is @ojetso. You can follow me on Twitter, and you may even, I'll follow you back for sure. And as I'm watching the game, I'll definitely, take screenshots and look at some tweets there and kind of include them in the broadcast. With that, we have, just like I did with like Nick Lynham and Alyssa Howd, friends of the show. And with that, we are kind of ranking up. Don Montreal says, "Thank you." You know what, Don Montreal? Thank you. You kind of really helped move this show along. I just really appreciate you being here, man. It was great to talk to you, and I hope you're back for another stream sometime. Especially when the Washington, I'm thinking of Braden Holtby still. When the Montreal Canadiens play the Winnipeg Jets, hopefully I have the game. Hopefully we can talk again. And with that, we're gonna kind of wrap up here. This has been Game Over Winnipeg. I'm Brendan Labarre. Make sure that you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to Game Over Winnipeg and all the Game Over channels. Follow me on Twitter. Follow everyone on Twitter. Follow Ty on Twitter. And let's Jets running 110%. What is the expected against 110%? What is the expected against Leafs? You know what? I'm doing both of those games, and they have not lost in any games that I have covered. So they're definitely going to beat the Leafs in Calgary. This has been Brendan Labarre, Game Over Winnipeg. Have a great night, Winnipeg.